Testing. Testing. All right. Okay. So, where we left off last was basically, as I recall, the district attorney dropped the case.
Right.
I mean, so they basically said, we're taking your house, and you know what, you're not worth the trouble to put into prison. So, so now this is, and in fact, I'm not going to even have to reference too many notes here because this is just, I'll just kind of have to do this off of memory. But, so now, I mean, after this late April date of 2008, I'm homeless, dispossessed of everything I own, except for a certain amount of money in my checking account. That was the only thing that was left to me. My truck was taken from me by the district attorney. And so the first thing I did was started contacting attorneys, started calling local attorneys. And basically one after another, and I figure I called at least a dozen. Every single one said, not interested, not interested whatsoever. In fact, one even said, you're talking about challenging a judicial ruling? He said, I don't care how lawless it was, I will never, ever challenge a judicial ruling. So the bottom line was that even though I tried, and I'm not a big fan of attorneys, with the exception of our brother here, I had to fight this, what is called pro se, meaning you're representing yourself. Now keep in mind, even though I know a lot now, I knew virtually nothing then. I mean, it was just simply a world I knew nothing of. I mean, moving a lawsuit. I mean, I didn't know anything more about that than I knew about how to fly an F-15. So I basically had to start studying what to do. And in conjunction with that point where I had to start studying it, I had some friends start giving me opinions about, well, here's the problem. This is why this has happened to you, Carlton. And what you really need to understand is you're not a person in these courts. These are no longer constitutional courts. They're admiralty courts, or they're gold-fringed flag courts, or they're British accredited registry courts, and every other kind of Koch-Berger theory about what these things, these courtrooms were. Everything except what they in fact were a constitutional court, because anybody can prove it by going and getting any judge's judicial oath. Every single judge, in fact, every single officer, whether legislative, executive, or judicial, they have to swear constitutional oaths to take their offices, and those oaths are always, hard copied and stored somewhere. So, unfortunately, I did not know that instantly. Okay, so I have these.
Where did you meet these straw man people?
Well, one was a couple that knew or at least the wife of this couple knew my wife. In fact, you could almost say that, I don't know that I'd say they were the family that introduced Fatima to my wife, but at what point my wife ever met Fatima, this family was right there, this couple. This couple had known Fatima for like 20 years, so they were no strangers to this woman or the Krupp family.
And they were friends with Fatima still?
Not at this point.
Uh-huh.
Certainly not at this point. No, at this point, she's gone.
Right.
She's gone, my wife's gone, my property's gone, everything's gone. And this had been at that point a year and a half.
Right.
So they had no contact with her. I mean, again, everybody that knew any of these people were completely cut off. And I mean, that's everybody in town. And there were a lot of people. My wife probably had at least a dozen friends that were, good people and people that I was happy to see in my wife's life, and they never heard a word. I mean, after that day, she was gone. So anyway, but nonetheless, mind you, I'll just, for economy of language, and it's pretty accurate anyway, I would just call me a legal ignoramus. I just did not know what to do, how to do it, really didn't know who I was still, even though I was, I knew I wasn't a slave. I mean, I knew enough to stand up to the judicial threats, but beyond that, in terms of now what do you do to fight this, or to gain remedy, I had no idea what to do. So I ended up going down these paths, and basically it was this one couple that, said, well, we know a guy who does this stuff, and he's very seasoned. He's been doing this for years and years. And I just perked right up and said, hey, I was glad to hear this. That's great. When can I meet him? Well, he's going to cost you, just to meet you, he's going to want $2,500 up front. And, oh yeah, no, this really happened. I'm $4,500 poor because of this guy and then one other guy that came after him for a short period. But instantly, when I finally meet this guy, this guy was just pure shyster nutcase. Instantly. It didn't take me any time at all to realize, wait a minute, this guy sounds like a fruitcake.
Where is he from?
This guy lived in Eastern Oregon, and they're basically living like what do you want to call them?
Off the grid.
Yeah, off the gridders, you want to call them.
Yeah.
They're out there, they're wearing the tinfoil hats, maybe everything but that. Okay, but yeah, they're off the gridders,
Right.
dedicated off the gridders, And they drove in. I met them, and so without making the story too long in that regard, after plowing, over, basically it was like $3,500 into this guy, and this guy was literally doing nothing. And I'm going back to this guy.
What was he saying he was going to do?
Oh, everything. Basically, I couldn't even recall, everything. But basically, well, this is this wrong, and this is where the error was, and blah blah. I said, well, wait a minute. You're just giving me rhetoric here. What's the tactic? What can we prove? What was the law broke? Oh no, this isn't about law. You have to understand that they claimed you're a straw man, but you never entered into jurisdiction. Therefore, and literally,
Right.
I just now realize that these people are just crazy. I'm not even using that rhetorically.
Right.
They're crazy. They've given their minds over to these doctrines of demons, and that's
Who has made these doctrines up? Where do they come from?
doctrines of demons.
Yeah.
As far as I literally believe that these things are orchestrated through the kingdom of hell. In other words, it feeds the arrogance of a human being. It basically gets the person to believe that, okay, I'm a slave and you're my master, but you just don't know that I'm a very clever slave, and I'm going to outwit you. Now, sure, you go ahead and slaughter everybody else,
Right.
but I'm just a very clever guy, and I'll be the guy you don't get. Now, how's that for a principled Christian stand?
Right.
And it's no principle at all. It's abject cowardice and evil.
Right.
So, anyway, I eventually realized this guy was just a rhetorical BS artist that was just a fruitcake. I don't know what else to say. And I finally, the guy who recommended, the guy/couple who were recommending this guy to me, I'm saying, why did you recommend this guy's giving me this, and this? What do you think? And they had no capacity themselves to even give an opinion because they were fully bought into this Fruit Loop.
Really?
Oh yeah. Well, that's why they wouldn't have recommended him. if they
Yeah.
didn't. And unfortunately, when I finally realized this guy was a complete fraud, because that's what he was, this guy named Milt, he was just a complete fraud. I realized, okay, well, I'm done with that. Well, then this friend who had recommended him to me said, well, listen, I'm sorry Milt didn't work out, but I do know a guy who really does. He's a former district attorney or assistant DA up in Portland, and he really does know what's going on, and you want to get a hold of him. And I thought, okay, well, the guy's an ex-DA. He's going to know what's going on.
Right.
I don't have to educate him. And I met him, and long story short, I'm going to tell you what, this guy made Milt look like, a paragon of sanity by comparison. This other guy was just absolutely, nuts. In fact, I had later learned the guy had been committed into an institution. I think the whole thing, he was so insane that he was literally just living a divorcement from reality life, believing that he was an assistant district attorney and whatnot. And
He never really was.
well, if he was, then he must have had a massive stroke that wiped out half of his brain.
Right.
Because, this guy didn't even know the simplest ORCPs, Oregon Rules of Civil Procedures. Now, at the time, I didn't know that, but once I finally had to study them, I'm going, you couldn't be a lawyer for 2.5 hours and not know ORCP 71B. Which is, basically it's called excusable neglect. Won't go into that trivia. But the point is, I thought there's no way he could have ever been a lawyer, much less an assistant district attorney, and not know this. It's just not possible. It was just such a foundational tool within a lawyer's, arsenal, so to speak. So unfortunately, I had given that guy $1,000 for retainer
Oh, man.
again. A courtesy of this friend and this so-called sage advice. And at this point, I realized, okay, so this couple, they're completely checked out. They're fruitcakes also. These other people, as far as I was concerned, they just proved themselves to be nothing more than demonic plants that were trying to say, okay, this Carlton is going to go after. He's going to go after us. So we need to get someone and say, here, send him that direction and get him to believe that that's the right direction to go. Well, it did to a point, and unfortunately, I would even say that it probably took me a better part of 6 months before I realized these are doctrines of demons. That it's captured a certain category of people in this country that believe this stuff, the admiralty laws and the straw man and the gold fringe flag and all this just fruitcakeism. But anyway, unfortunately, it cost me $4,500 in 6 months, and the 6 months was all of it was valuable, and so it was at that point that I had to start literally teaching myself from ground up, because nobody was helping me. Nobody at the church had even a notion. I don't even know if I was still. I might have been still. Yeah, I was still going there at the time. But I mean, there was just nobody. Nobody even said, "Hey, can I get you a glass of water?" They just said, "Better you than me," is what the message was there. So. So I had to start learning law. I had to start learning, and I can't even, to be honest with you, it took so many, you're talking about literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of online studying and finding examples and finding, samples of lawsuits and, what the mechanism was to do with a form that the paperwork has to be in. I realized that these devils were going to, look for any, T not crossed or I not dotted to stop it, and so I had to really make sure I had got it exact. So that took. So I broke free of the Admiralty nut jobs, in the end of 2008, and I'd say, yeah, I filed my first suit. It was a state-based law suit under the Oregon Tort Claims Act that. I finally got that filed, I think it was in June or July of 2009. And so, just to say, it took me 8 months to be able to do that, to be able to know and write up the document, establish my pleadings and what was done wrong and whatnot. And so I did, and I filed this. And so, even though, I could go through step-by-step, procedure at this point from, say, June 2009 on to the end, the bottom line is that, I'll go into a little more detail. When I did this, one of the first things I learned, because I also had to study the Oregon Rules of Civil Procedure, which is a very, very long document. That was probably the hardest thing of all to do, because that's what governs exactly what you do and the preciseness of what has to be done in civil or criminal matters. Well, in this case, civil, because it's civil matters. But, what was I saying here? One of the things I realized, so I have to go back to the very same court or courthouse jurisdiction that did this to me. Okay, so obviously you're thinking, well, wait, you're not holding your breath that anything's good is going to happen there, right? Well, I did learn. I found an ORS, which stands for Oregon Revised Statute. That's just statutes, governing these things. And one of the things I did find, even though I remember that punk assistant DA, even at some point, I can't even remember how I ended up having this conversation, but I know what it was, when he was threatening to, with the trial. And I said, listen, I personally want to recommend that one judge that I was before. He was the only judge I knew. The only thing I could say about him was I didn't know he was corrupt. The others I knew were corrupt. Okay, so I said, okay, well, I certainly am not going to go with who I know is corrupt. Right. So I told this guy, who was the chief assistant DA, that I wanted him for the trial. And he goes, that's not how it works, fella. He said, you just can't select judges. He says, there's no mechanism for that whatsoever. Well, guess what I learned? Under ORS Chapter 12, Section 250, it's called disqualification of judges. And so I filed a motion. I said, I hereby disqualify the judges I didn't want. Not in that case where they were trying to convict me for criminal trespassing, but in my suit, obviously
Right.
I wanted the corrupt ones. I'm not going to let Janet Holcomb review my suit and go, oh, gee, he's coming after me for 7 figures. Oh, okay, you know what? This goes right into the trash.
Right.
Okay, so I disqualified the ones I knew were corrupt, and I left the only judge that I didn't know was corrupt. I thought, well, I'm not going to disqualify him because he may be decent.
Yeah.
Although looking back, I probably should have had enough wherewithal to say, look, they're all in the same club right
Right.
there. But I didn't disqualify him. And so after I filed the suit and also filed simultaneously this motion to disqualify all other judges except him, which would force him to be the judge,
Right.
I get a letter a couple weeks later that said, I, Locke Williams, hereby disqualify myself from adjudicating in any of this matter, and hereby recommend it to John Smith, right up the road in Polk County, which is one of the 2 counties of Salem. And at the time I thought, well, okay, obviously it smelled. Like, why would you do that? Why would you even feel a need to do
Right.
that? Okay, well, I think, I'll just go to the end, that the judge that it was referred to summarily dismissed. He said, dismissed. You don't get to do this. It begs the question. So why did that one judge do it? Well, I think it served 2 purposes for that guy. And one, it gives the appearance that, oh, gee, I want to be as objective as possible. And since I work with these fellows, these honorable judges, including the very honorable Janet Holcomb, I just don't think it would be appropriate for me to do that. Well, that's what it looks like. But I think they just had their hand-picked guys. This is what the answer is going to be, and you're going to do it. And
So they took a judge from another county.
another county.
Whereas
Exactly.
they were all in one county.
Yeah, that was
They
Benton
chose-
County. They went up to the next county north, which is in Salem. the
Interesting. I
capital.
didn't know they did that.
Well,
Only under like
I
extraneous
didn't.
circumstances.
Well, exactly. It would
Yeah.
have to be. It would have to be the most extreme circumstance.
Yeah.
You figure that out on your own.
Right.
Like this just wouldn't be something you just do. Like, oh, I got golf this afternoon. I'll just have Bill up the street. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. This has to be. You have to have a really damn good cause to do this. So they did it. It was obviously it's just clearly orchestrated for the outcome they knew they were going to give me.
They were probably allied with this judge.
Oh, for sure.
Right,
Oh, for
yeah.
sure. Listen, I have a feeling when I'm done telling you all of the trial issues, there's no question in my mind that everybody got the memo, and including the appellate court and Supreme Court. Like this is how it's going to be here, and you're going to do whatever is necessary to make it go away. But at that time, I'm just going to go through it. So I get this thing. It just said summarily dismissed. It says, well, under the Oregon Tort Claims Act, if you look at such and such section B, C, subsection II, it does say that it would exclude. It didn't. He just construed this to say, well, a judge is excluded because it's a state actor, and therefore, it's not covered. Well, that's just complete baloney. Obviously, any void judgment is, and it's clearly not written for state actors that do this. It's written almost exclusively for basically citizenry. Say a corporation acting against a citizen or whatnot, and it had no applicability whatsoever. This guy was just a kangaroo judge bought and paid for to give this dismissal. So I realized, okay, now I'm going to have to appeal. And so now I had to learn appellate procedure. And that was much harder. Just filing the circuit court suit was extraordinarily stressful. That was nothing compared to the appellate deal. It was just incredibly intimidating, and not knowing knowing nothing about it. I don't even know if how much time I should even spend on it. But let's just say, I had to look up. I finally got a hold of the Oregon Rules of Appellate Procedure. I actually bought it at the Supreme Court building up in Salem. And by the way, I was doing most of my study up in the law library up at the Supreme Court building.
They would let you in?
Yeah, it's public access.
Oh.
They didn't like me there. Well,
Right.
I'll never forget. I remember the clerk there, the woman clerk that was up at the front. It was just. To her, it was just like I walked in Adolf Hitler. And literally, I'm not even making this up. They knew the instant I walked in that he's the enemy. I'm not saying they knew why I was there at that
Right.
time, but they just knew. Like, the only people who are supposed to be in here are basically appellate and Supreme Court judges and maybe some very, very high-powered lawyers that
Right.
do a big, big case, in which case they'd probably recognize them. So I was recognized right away as the enemy. And anyway, long story short, I mean, it took me a tremendous amount of time and effort, and I can't even go into how much stress I was under during all of this. It was taking years off my life, I'm convinced.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
How did the court process become so convoluted to where the average citizen can't understand exactly what's going on? I mean, because you had to do all this research just to get to the point where you could make a complaint.
Yeah, you asked the $1 billion question.
They make it intentionally complicated.
Absolutely. It's you see, lawyerdom is a syndicate. It's a guild, or if you wanted a priesthood. I mean, they're basically saying we are the only people that can speak to matters of law.
Well, that's why they have the legalese.
Right, and that's right. And they purposely conjure up that garbage and keep alive a lot of this Latin, so that we don't know what they're doing, and so we basically show up, as ignoramuses. And believe me, I'm telling you, I was one. I mean, I realize at this point, like, why don't I even ask myself that question you just asked me? Why don't I know right now instantly what to do? How is it I'm completely left flat-footed?
Well, they don't teach you anything in school.
Well, and it's on purpose. They want you uneducated so you would know how to stop or how to at least seek remedy in this matter. Well, they don't. It is certainly orchestrated to be this way.
If they said it in plain English, then all of the deceit and the lies and what they were trying to do to you would become evident if they just said it.
Well, if the church were, what we were really talking about here is why is the church allowed itself to be in this condition? And it's because, let's just not say why the church is right now. Let's just say we just acknowledge that it is, and because it is, we've had our eyes taken off of the Christian common law, which is basically you cannot commit criminal acts of aggression against another party. You can't rob, steal, assault. I mean, everybody understands those principles, okay? The problem is we've walked away from that many generations ago, and we now live in what's called statutory law, which isn't law at all. It's just politicians issuing tyrannical dictates. I mean, that's what we live under now. And
statutory law?
Statutory law. In other words, they don't give a darn about the Constitution and constitutional boundaries. And we've allowed this to take place. We've allowed the notion that we can't go into a courtroom and we can go in pro se. I mean, that's what I did. And believe me, I could tell you, they hated it with a passion. I think that's in part, at least in part, why the criminal trespassing was dropped. They did not want me in there speaking what I knew to say. In other words, if they know if they've got a barred attorney over there, they're winking and nodding at each other, and they go, "We know how this is going to work." Okay, they pretend that they're adversaries. They're not adversaries. They're collaborators. They are on the same side. They just, to you and me, they're faking this adversarial relationship, but it's no adversarial relationship at all. Now, again, I mean, we have a brother here who's a fantastic man of honor and integrity who would be that rare exception to what I call lawyerdom, but he's a very, very rare exception. So basically, as a general axiom, you can just say, no, this is what it is. It's a phony priesthood that the church has accepted over it, among many, many other things. I mean, this is just one element of, you and I have talked about so many things, it's enormous in scope. But this is a huge deal, because if you don't have access to courts for remedy, if you don't have that to solve your problems, then you only have your gun left. If you can't do it civilly, you've only got war left. That's basically it. Or you just say, well, we'll just tell us where the next Auschwitz is being built, and we'll just go there, okay? Because I mean, obviously, you're my master now, and I just follow whatever you dictate to me.
Right. It is like a priesthood.
It absolutely is, because it is saying you can't represent yourself. It's effectively saying it. And these guys have gone to law school and they've learned all the tricks. And nothing's common law anymore. Nothing's common law that every single person would understand. And the judges, of course, can only be called out of lawyerdom. That, at least in Oregon, and I think it's in every state of the union, to be honest with you. So you and I couldn't run for circuit court judge. You're excluded. You're excluded. I also learned you can't run for sheriff unless you've been this is Oregon again. If you hadn't been a sheriff's deputy for, I think it was like 10 years or something like that. But I mean, these are things that are affected to enslave us. If we can't get access to that, either through being a judge, or having my own counsel. Let's say I said I got to fight a criminal charge of some kind. Hey, Al, can you help me out? Well, guess what? You wouldn't be able to. They'd say, oh no, you don't dare cross that. You cross that bar line, we got a cell waiting for you, and they will do it. So this is how far it's gone. So, but your question is the question to ask, because this is how we got there, and this is why, for me, it was such an uphill battle, because like everyone else, I started from effectively zero too. I had nothing of knowledge. I just knew I wasn't a slave, but in terms of did I know what to do, I knew nothing of what to do. So that's what took so much time, and going through this appeal process. I mean, the appeal process in Oregon, you've got the Oregon Court of Appeals, and then there's the Oregon Supreme Court. And so I challenged, this was an enormous, there was a lot more effort to do the appeal than it was the actual lawsuit. So I eventually, and it took me, goodness, the appellate matters are extraordinarily consumptive of time. I mean, you just get chewed up, and believe me, this is what I can't. I'm going to be jumping through months and months here. Sometimes some procedures, the opposition, in which case is the state of Oregon. I sued the state of Oregon because that's the entity I have to sue on behalf of a judge. You basically can't sue a judge for judicial order. It's the legal term is called respondeat superior. It's like if your child throws a rock through a window and your neighbor goes, hey, your child threw a rock through my window, I want it repaired, and you pay for it. Well, you wouldn't say, oh, well, there's Johnny, he threw the rock, he's 3 years old, go get the money from him. No, you're responsible as a parent. You'd be called the respondeat superior. Had you retain the full responsibility for that act. Same thing with judicial malfeasance. The state of Oregon is the head of the judges, and the judges are state actors, and so that's why I sued the state of Oregon. By the way, it's also why I went to the state courts rather than federal courts, because if you're suing a state, the court of what's called original jurisdiction, if the state is a defendant, is the United States Supreme Court. So I couldn't even take it to a federal district court or even a federal circuit court. I mean, I had, and listen, if I hired 10 grams, believe me, it'd be a shot in the dark to get anything accepted by the U.S. Supreme Court, because the number of appeals they accept are just incredibly small.
Right.
So, and they're certainly not going to accept a case like this where, well, it obviously was facially criminal what the judge and the sheriff did, but it really isn't a federal matter in the end. So anyway, I'm just kind of, backfilling you there. So anyway, the bottom line is I finally did get my appeal filed, and I'll be honest with you, at this point, I'm still believing that the appellate court's just going to drop the hammer on these circuit courts for what they're doing. I'm literally believing. I'm thinking, because that's the whole point of appellate courts. I mean, the idea of an appellate court not stopping that kind of judicial criminality would be just basically for the appellate courts to say we serve no function. Well, I had to learn that they are bought and paid for too. And they dismissed outright. And I should tell you that I won't go into it here, because I've got the briefs in a big trunk. But I have to tell you, when I got the responding, what's called the answering brief from the state of Oregon. By the way, I serve the state attorney general. I have to serve him, and so I have to go to the Justice Department and serve his clerk. And anyway, finally, he assigns an assistant attorney general to the matter, and I finally get the answering brief, and I have to tell you, I was just shocked when I saw motion to dismiss. I was just shocked. I just couldn't even believe it. I now understand now why, but at that time, it was incomprehensible to me to think that getting the state, truly the state actors involved, that they would cover for this criminal operation down in Benton County. I just figured there's just no way that would happen.
Right.
But I was wrong. And so, long story short, they got the Oregon Court of Appeals without opinion. In other words, they didn't say anything other than just eventually, and this, my goodness, it probably took a year before I finally got an answer. I mean, there's a decision from the Oregon Court of Appeals about the matter, and they just send me a one-page thing, say, and there's just a 3-judge panel in a matter like that. We affirm without opinion, which means we affirm what that Polk County judge said. And it's also, in my opinion, utterly criminal to say we affirm without opinion. Well, you know, if you have an opinion, you better articulate what your reasoning is. You better articulate your lawful reasoning. And by the way, my appellate argument was quite simple: is that the Oregon Tort Claims Act does not protect state actors who commit blatant constitutional boundary violations. It's clearly not written for that. I mean, obviously, it would be absurd to think, well, we need to have a section within the Oregon Tort Claims Act that deals with judges and sheriffs and things like that collude to steal property and things like that. So we better write that out. Well, that's preposterous, and that was the bulk of my argument. It was just that. Is that this claim by this Polk County judge, so-called judge, is utterly void on its face. And then I made my argument. My argument was very good, although it wasn't as good when I submitted my U.S. Section 1983 case. But so that's the Oregon Court of Appeals. Well, there is still the Oregon Supreme Court, and so now I realized, well, I'll take it to the Oregon Supreme Court then. And so I had to start over again there. But
Another appeal.
Another appeal. I mean, it's still in the same building. It's just, one building, but it's still the same. Pretty much the same process.
So it was pretty easier this time along?
Well, yeah, every stage I go through this, I'm getting a little more familiar. Okay, that's not so intimidating now. I do get that. And I had the Oregon Rules of Appellate Procedure in front of me. I bought the book. And so, I mean, it just says, okay, do this. And again, it's not easy. It was never easy. I mean,
right.
They have every requirements even for colors of pages.
Wow.
Yeah, literally. And and thickness. Oh, and then spacing, and I mean margins. No, literally, in fact, in the end, I had to attest to the word count.
Wow.
Like, I hereby attest under penalty of perjury of law that the word count in this document does not exceed such and such a number. And I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. This guild, this syndicate, I mean, it knows what it's doing. I mean, it's saying we don't want anyone coming in here that is not wholly owned under the bar system. And but nonetheless, I did plow it through, and I got the same. Even though I basically just said that the Oregon Court of Appeals is full of what, and they didn't even give it an opinion, so I don't even know specifically what to attack. But clearly, it's wrong because the Oregon Tort Claims Act does not have any provision for protecting state actors violating constitutional law. And again, in the end, what you do with the state Supreme Court, you file a petition for review. That's what it's called, a petition for review. I'm asking you to review the lower court, in this case, the Court of Appeals' ruling. And I'm having to make an argument. The Oregon Court of Appeals' ruling was wrong for these reasons. And so I did that, and eventually, and I can't remember how long it took. I mean, I'm thinking that was at least another 6 months. And eventually got another one-page petition for review denied, without opinion. Without opinion.
This is the highest court.
This is the highest court in Oregon. It was 7 judges.
Because you're not part of the club. See?
No, I'm the enemy.
Right. You're not part of the whole guild.
Well,
you don't have rights.
Well, look, even if you are, let me tell you, I've studied this enough. I've thought about this thing called lawyerdom, and I really realize that even those who are in it, man, you have made, largely speaking. I mean, I'm not everyone, like I said, we've got a brother who's not, but by and large, you make a deal with the devil. You are saying, because you see, an attorney can be disbarred. If they take that bar number from you, you're done. It's over in an instant. And basically, again, I'm telling you, up in Oregon, as I understood, I mean, any circuit court judge is saying, you know what, just pick our brother as an example. I don't like your attitude. You know what? I call it contempt. You're done. So that's how tenuous their position is. So think about that. You go to law school for X number of years, you finally work and you're building up client bases and you're building a business and you're finally getting successful. Guess what? You're thinking every day, all I have to have is one punk judge look at me wrong and say, I don't like you. Oh, you go to that church? You know what? I think I just saw a contemptuous look in your face. You know what? Have a nice life finding another work. So that's what I'm saying. These people are bought into a system that it's not like they're part of the club. They're fools to think they're part of the club. They're part of the problem, but they're not part of the power structure, not by a mile.
Now, who's above the judges?
You saw the movie Eyes Wide Shut? Those people behind the masks are the ones, and I mean not even joking. That's who. I mean it's very obvious that they take marching orders. They're supposed to look to you and me to be, oh, they are the highest power. I mean, of course, constitutionally they're not. They still are public servants.
Aren't they
in theory.
subservient to the Constitution?
Yes,
supposedly?
of course. Yeah, of course. In fact, when I go to my Section 1983 lawsuit, which we'll probably just end it here with the appellate matter.
Yeah. What time is it?
It's almost 2:40.
Oh, wow, okay.
So anyway, I'll just wrap it up here.
Yeah.
So that's how it ended with the Oregon Court of, the Oregon Court of Appeals and the Oregon Supreme Court regarding what I call my Oregon Tort Claims Act based lawsuit, and so they rejected it, and so that was probably around 2011. I mean, that took between the time of filing in June of 2009, my lawsuit, the original lawsuit in the circuit court, up to getting a state Supreme Court rejection or review denied. It had to have been at least 2 years. I mean, I've got my paper to prove it. I mean, I could find out exactly what the timeline was, but it was at least 2 years. So after 2 years of fighting this thing alone, I just leave with the fact that you have no idea how stressful this was for me. This was just, I mean, it was days, each day was like living a week or a month of my life, and in terms of wear and tear on me. And so after all of that effort, again, no one lifting a finger to help me, no one even saying, "Attaboy, we even, we're with you, hang in there." I got that rejection out of the state Supreme Court, and so I guess what we'll just do is leave it right here, and I'll pick up where I then go back to Benton County again. I have to go to the county where the crime took place, and I file a U.S.-based law that's called U.S. Section 1980, Title 42, Section 1983, which is a federal statute that speaks specifically to any state actor, federal or state, that violates, due process rights and constitutional boundaries affecting an injury to a citizen. Well, bingo, that was it. Now, will just let you know that I didn't know about Section 1983 when I started. Mind you, again, I'm an ignoramus here. So I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to go to state law, and I started looking, state Oregon revised statutes for, provision for this. And it also seemed at the time the best thing to do, get the law that's closest to home here. So if something under Oregon law is my provision, let's go with that. But we'll leave it there, and we'll pick up with the federal-based lawsuit that I go back in for round 2. So, okay?
So you did actually end up getting a trial with them, right?
Oh, no. I'm
Never?
Never. No, in fact, I wish we had more time, because I'd like to get to that part where you're going to hear something. You're going to hear one of the most evil statements ever made to me in my entire life. But
What
I'll
was
say,
it?
No.
right,
You'll
all right.
hear it. The next interview, you will hear it. And I'll give you a hint. It was given to me by a judge. So we'll conclude there.
Yeah, good stuff. I feel like I almost want to just make a short clip too about just